My name is Rob. I was diagnosed with bipolar after my suicide attempt. So a little bit about my childhood. Um, my my dad, the man that I thought was my dad, turned out not to be my dad and my biological father. And I found that out at 5 years old. And from a very early age, because he was my sister's natural father, there began there began this like separation for me. I was a little bit black sheeped in that situation. I always wondered why I got treated just slightly different than my sister, and I thought it was just because I was a boy and she was a girl, but it was because that was his real child. And then over time, just the relationship between my mom and my dad was very chaotic. It was drug induced, alcohol filled. There was a lot of violence, a lot of emotional abuse. Police were at my house all the time. They were arresting my dad. They would take him to jail, and uh, he would be out in the very same night, still intoxicated, and my mom and dad would continue to fight and argue. I walked in on my parents using drugs before, cutting them up, using them. Um, they told me it was something completely different, but hindsight 2020, that's what they were doing. There were parties at my house almost every weekend, or at least lots of loud music and people coming in and out, really late nights. By the time I was 14, 15 years old, I had experimented with alcohol myself. My first drink was actually when I was about 4 or 5 years old at a neighbor's house. My dad and the neighbor were hanging out, and they encouraged me to drink some alcohol. But it wasn't until I was about 14 or 15 where I started drinking. And when I started drinking, the problems just kind of went away. And I liked that feeling. Even though I felt really bad the next day, I felt really trashed, it didn't really matter because I didn't have to think about my issues. Shortly after that, I got introduced to marijuana. After that, it was acid and shrooms, and then eventually cocaine was my drug of choice. Looking back, I used all these substances and all this alcohol really more as a band-aid for not being able to handle my childhood traumas, the things that I witnessed in my house, the violence. Even with my dad, there were confrontations between him and I as I got older, where they became very, very physical, where there was evidence of abuse left behind. And so the alcohol and drug abuse led into this addiction for me, and a lifestyle. It really just became a lifestyle for me. And by the time I was 29 years old, I was so engulfed in that lifestyle and getting in and out of relationships, because we learn love and trust from our parents, and I learned how to operate in a relationship from them. At 29 years old, I met a young lady that had a lot of her own trauma, and she eventually accused me of rape and attempted murder, which led to my suicide attempt, where I jumped headfirst out of a third-story loft window, headfirst, and clipped an awning on the way down, and severed my spine, shattered my left arm, broke my right wrist, and collapsed my left lung. Went in for a 10-hour surgery, woke up to being arrested, and at some point the doctor's telling me that I may never walk again. So I was up against never walking, hospital bills, and now going to prison in the hospital. And while I was there, I was being interviewed by a psychologist, and within moments, he diagnosed me with being bipolar and manic depressant. He was actually almost surprised that no one had diagnosed me with that before. So the next few years were really tough because I had to learn to start walking again, start moving well, And because I was so used to being consumed with substance, when I was getting the Oxycontins and the Percocets and the Valium, all of it, there was like a plethora of drugs that I had to take to kill the pain. I was taking all those not just to kill the physical pain, but to kill the emotional pain as well. And over the next 4 or 5 years of rehabbing, I was eventually able to get off of that stuff and really start focusing on the traumas in my life, the childhood experiences, how I could address them and let them go. I also know that with my healthy lifestyle, that I'm able to combat a lot of this stuff. You know, with the constant movement, the exercise, the eating well, serving others, helping other people, raising my family, my marriage. I think the combination of all these positive attributes really kind of prevents me from going into certain realms. And I really have spent the last 10 years, the last decade, addressing all these areas that I was struggling with, and being able to have resolve in my heart so I didn't have to be confronted with what I was diagnosed with. At one point, I was also diagnosed with ADD, which I totally use that to my advantage when it comes to fitness. But there are challenges at times being focused on one thing at a time, being very detailed and organized, you know. So I have to bring in other people to help me to do those things as well. Well, I don't think, you know, you can tell somebody that has trauma or mental health challenges that they're being a wimp at all. You know, that stuff is very real, especially to that individual. And just because someone else hasn't experienced that doesn't mean, or maybe someone is experiencing that, you know, but they're really afraid to confront their own stuff. And so they're coming at you with it. You know, that's your own personal journey. And don't be afraid to ask for help, you know, whatever that help looks like for you. And you may not even get it right the first time, the second time, but I think the goal and part of the journey is to continue to pursue freedom from that. And so I don't care if you have to see different counselors. I don't, you know, if you have to become more spiritual or faith-based, you have to try new modalities in order to achieve the peace and freedom that you're truly seeking. You know, I'm the owner of Kingdom Fit Faith and Training. I do use fitness as a vehicle to help myself and help other people. I know the neurological and physiological impact that movement has on the brain. You know, everybody wants a quick fix. The reality is that, you know, I never regret having a workout, even if I don't feel like working out. When I get done, I'm glad that I did. You know, a lot of times we don't feel like doing stuff, but if we commit to it and complete it, you feel good about it afterwards. I'm also a speaker. I go to churches and speak at events, and I share a little bit more in depth my story and how I got through it. I'm also a youth mentor, so I work with a lot of kids that have been through foster care, have committed some pretty tough crimes that a lot of society would turn their back on these kids. And a lot of these young men are fatherless, their dads aren't around, and so I also work with them. I just try to give back as much as I can, you know, through my business ministry. I'm also, you know, my son's little league coach, so to be around all these other little young guys, you know, and helping them out is very gratifying. And I'm also the manager of the Recovery Rebels, which is a softball team that we just started here in the Springs. And what we want to do is we want to encourage sobriety through physical activity I know that a lot of people that have been through struggles can't walk into church because they feel judged. You know, I don't think the church has always does a great job on really helping people. That's just my experiences. And so to be able to create that environment, some people are struggling to go to like NA or AA, you know, because something just doesn't line up for them. So again, to be able to come out and do physical activity and have a community of supporters and have fun with them and just know that you have friends, because I think ultimately that's what we need. We need support groups and we need a community to help lift us up out of our rut.